Hello and welcome to another tutorial. We're going to continue our discussion on how to download, install and set up the native image tool. We looked at the Mac OS and Linux, and now we're going to look at the last one, which is Windows. Windows is always a little bit different than Mac OS and Linux because Mac OS and Linux, they share the same core, which is Unix operating system, whereas Windows, things are a little bit different, right? So first of all, Windows doesn't really use the bash terminal, so born again shell terminal. So Windows uses its own command prompt, or in the Windows 10, basically the recent versions of Windows, they introduced this PowerShell. You can install bash terminal in Windows 10 or the most recent versions by installing the Linux subsystem for Windows, or you can just download install some bash terminal emulator. So these are emulators, so you type the bash commands or Unix commands in that emulator, and that behind the scenes it translates to the Windows commands, right? For example, in bash terminal you say ls and it lists all the files. In the Windows command prompt you have to say dir or directory, it lists all the directories. So this kind of emulators, you don't install an actual bash terminal, it just emulates that. So behind the scenes it translates the command back and forth. Now my recommendation is that you install MSys2, and what it does, it not only provides a bash terminal emulator for you, it also allows you to install basically it has Git repositories, online repositories that allow you to install, for example, GCC for Windows, which is open source build tool. But for our use case, as we saw before, native image mainly works with the default toolchain of your platform. In Windows, it's a Microsoft Visual Compiler, so you pretty much have no option. If you want to use native image to compile your Java application to native executable binary, you have to install Microsoft Visual Compiler, right? So, and the most straightforward way is to download the Microsoft Visual Studio installer and then select only C++ stuff, and then done, right? C and C++ stuff, and then you install it. It installs the IDE, all the necessary build tools. We saw that the complication here is that when you install that, it doesn't add all the command line directories that you need for the compiler to run in the terminal to the path. So you have to manually set them up, right? All right, so we're going to download and install GraalVM, the latest version. I believe the latest version at the time of recording this video is 22.1.0. And then after that, native image doesn't come by default with the downloaded file. Then you have to use the Graal updater to install native image. And the main difference here is that in the macOS and Unix, we saw that in the bin directory, in addition to the executable binaries that are from the JDK, there are also extra executable binaries like GU, right? But in Windows, GU is not an executable file. It's a command line script. And when you run it in terminal, it actually runs all the lines in that terminal, right? In that command line script. So this is one of the main differences. And so you have to keep this .cmd, because if you type the name of application without any extension in the command prompt in Windows, it assumes that it's a .exe. .exe, or basically it's an executable application, which is the default assumption even in macOS and Linux bash terminals, right? Whenever you type something without some something without any extension, the terminal assumes that it's supposed to be an executable. So you have to execute gu.cmd, which is a command prompt script. And note that this is not compatible with the bash terminal emulator, so you kind of need to run this in the default command prompt. And then install native image, it reaches out to the Git repository and then downloads the native image and installs it. And then you can add the bin directory of the GraalVM to path, and therefore you can both use the JDK that comes with the GraalVM, and also the native image directly is available. And the same thing happens to native image. It's not an executable file, it's a command line script. So again, if you type native-image, the terminal doesn't recognize it. You have to say native-image.cmd, which and then you pass some arguments, and then this script reads the arguments and executes some commands. All right, so in the Windows, the GU, the Graal updater, and the native image, these are command line scripts. Okay, after we install download the native image, we try to run the native image script .cmd hyphen version and see if it works fine. Here I've just dragged and dropped the native image.cmd file directly to terminal hyphen version, and it tells me that it's the GraalVM Java 17 Community Edition, so everything works fine. You can do the same thing in Windows PowerShell. So in the Windows PowerShell, you can type, you can go to the bin directory of the GraalVM and then say gu.cmd install native image, right? So run gu.cmd, which is a command run script from the bin directory. So let's head to Windows and see what we can. So you search for download GraalVM and then click on the first link. It takes you to the home page, and then we want to download the community edition. The latest version is 22.1. So let's hit download. It takes us to the Git repository, and then we want to select Windows. And at the moment, Linux and macOS, they are available both for x64-bit platform, which is AMD, Intel, and ARM. But then Windows apparently only is available for the Intel and AMD, which is the x64 architecture. So let's go with JDK 17. Let's hit the download. And then it's going to basically start downloading. The size of the file is about 350 megabyte. So it's going to take some time. And after that, we're going to unzip it and then move it to our program files where we installed our other JDKs. So I'm going to open the directory and then extract it here. So right click, 7-zip, extract here. And then I'm going to open up my file explorer and go to the program files. So this PC, the root directory of my operating system, program files, and then Java. And then so far I've installed the JDK 17, JDK 8. I've installed an older version which of GraalVM 17, which is 22.002. And now the most recent version is 22.1.0. So we can copy or cut it. I'm going to copy and then paste this here. And then it asks us for administrative permission. We say yes. You don't really need to enter any password. So we're going to just copy and paste to the root of our C folder, program files, and then in the Java directory. After this is done, we're going to run our terminal, which I already have it here, and then we can let's go and let's wait for this to finish, and then we can run the from the bin directory. We can run the Graal updater and then install the native image. So it's almost done. I'm running in a virtual machine, so it's a little bit slow, but again, almost done. And then we can close this window. We can also minimize our Explorer, the Microsoft Edge. So almost done. Let's wait again to finish. And Windows 10 also comes with the PowerShell. So the PowerShell, I believe you can try like the bash commands here. For example, ls. It works fine, right? So it kind of is closer to the bash terminal in macOS and Linux. So I have the CMD here and also the PowerShell. So let's put these side by side. Okay, and then we can work with PowerShell or command prompt. So this one is almost done. Let's wait a little bit more. So for example, in the command prompt, if you type ls, it's not going to probably work. It actually works nicely, which is interesting. So you type dir and it shows you the list in basically okay, so this is done. what we can do now, for example, go here, go to the bin directory, and actually, so we can copy this path and then say cd, and then use a double quote, and then we are now in the GraalVM 17 version 22.1.0, and then the bin directory. And now if I type gu -- version, it's not going to find it. Let's see, and then if we say gu.cmd -- version, let's see. Okay, so we have to say dot, for example, gu.cmd -- version. Now it works fine. I guess / also works fine in the PowerShell. Yes. So if we don't add the current directory here, gu, it's not going to work. We can try with the command prompt. So cd, let's copy this path again. And then yes, let's use double quote because of the space in the program files. And now let's say gu -- version. It works, interestingly. And then gu.cmd -- version, it also works, right? So let's stay with the command prompt. And if I type gu here, you see gu is a cmd command line script. So we can open with the text editor, and it has some scripts that get run, right? So this is not a native executable file, it's a script. So what we can say is say gu.cmd install native image. So insufficient privileges for administration of GraalVM. You need become an administrator user to perform administrative tasks on GraalVM. Depending on operating system, you may need to use OS tools or okay. So let's try this here. So gu.cmd install native image. So insufficient privileges for administration. So let's see, sudo and then gu.cmd. Let's see if this works. Install native image. All right, so what we're going to do, actually what we need to do, we need to run the terminal with the administrative privileges. Let's say type cmd and then right click, run as administrator. Now we are an administrator, so let's change back to the bin directory of the GraalVM cd, and note that use that double quote, so that because program files unfortunately has a space in it. And then let's go back here and then say gu.cmd install native image, and now it's downloading the native image from GraalVM repositories from GitHub, and then installing new components. It's going to put a native-image.cmd file in the bin directory. So let's wait for this to finish. It's installing the new component, and after it's finished, we are ready to quickly check whether the native image works fine. So I'm going to open up this test directory and create a new text file. Let's call it our hello-world.java. I want to quickly update, basically write a simple hello world Java application and then compile it with the native image, public class hello world, and then public static void main, and then a string args, and then system .out.println hello world from Java application in Windows, and semicolon. So this is our Java application. So apparently, okay, so this is done. And then let's say if we have the native image.cmd -- version, and it works fine. So native image is ready to go. All right, so we are in the bin directory. What we can do, first of all, we can go ahead and define a Graal home environment variable. So let's do that. Let's go one directory up here, and then copy this, and then we are going to go back to our file explorer, and then this PC system properties, and then advanced system settings, environment variables, and then we're going to in the user variable for this particular user, I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call it Graal home, and the value I'm going to put it actually in double quotes because of this space in program files, and hit OK. Let's close the terminal or command prompt and then open it up again. And we are going to say that echo percent Graal home and see program files. Okay, and then we're going to say that percent Graal home, we're accessing an environment variable /bin /native -image and .cmd -- version is not recognized as an internal or external command. So the problem here is that we have to put it in do we need to put it in the double quotes? No. So I guess we need to go back to the system settings, environment variables, edit this and remove that double quote that we had here. Let's see if this works. Let's close this and open this up again. All right, and then echo percent Graal home. All right, and then Graal home percent bin or / oh, actually we should probably use / bin and then native -image.cmd -- version. All right, so that space in the program files word is going to cause a problem. So let's put the Graal home in a double quote here, and now this works. So make sure that there is, unfortunately in Windows, the program files directory has a space in it, and terminals, command prompts, they're not really that friendly to spaces. So you kind of need to put them in double quote to tell the terminal to treat them as a raw string, right? All right, so our Graal home is basically nicely defined. Actually, we can also define a non-standard environment variable in Windows for simplicity, which is called GraalVM. So let's go back here and then open up our environment variables, new environment variables, Graal_bin, all caps, and then paste the bin directory. Okay. All right, and then let's quickly close up and open up our terminal. And if I say basically Graal_bin directory and then / native image.cmd -- version. Okay, so again we have to put this in double quotes, this GraalVM, because of the space in program files. We need to use a / here. Okay, so we use a / in the command prompt. Everything works fine. Make sure that you put this GraalVM or Graal home in the double quotes so that it works. All right, so we have access to our native image. Everything seems to be set properly, and then I'm going to use the JDK that comes with with the GraalVM to compile my Java application. So I'm going to cd into the test directory, or actually in the desktop, and then this test directory. All right, so I have hello world. I'm going to say double quote Graal bin directory, double quote, and then / javac -cp here, and then hello world.java. So let's see, everything compiles fine. We're using the Java compiler from the GraalVM, and now we have the hello world.class. And we're going to say that instead of javac, we're going to use the JVM and give it the name of the class, which is hello world, and it works fine. So right now we were able to quickly compile, and now we're going to say that GraalVM, and then instead of using the JDK or JVM, we're going to use the native image.cmd. And you give it the class path, which we only have one class, and that's in the current working directory. So class path is the dot, or the current working directory, and then the name of the class file, which is hello world. So let's run this. So it's going to fail because native image tries to search for the default toolchain, which is the Microsoft Visual Compiler. And I believe Microsoft Visual Compiler, let's see, yeah, so default native compiler executable cl.exe not found. So cl.exe is the command line tool for the Microsoft Visual Compiler, was not found on the path. And what we said before, you have to go to the where you install the Microsoft Visual Compiler. So this PC, C drive, program files, Microsoft Visual Studio, the version, community, and then there is a VC, Visual Compiler, auxiliary, build, and they have a command line scripts for setting up the environment variable if you want to do a 64-bit compilation. So you just drag this and then basically execute it. It's a command line script that sets the value. And now actually what we can do, we can actually define a global environment variable. So let's also do that. That's very good to have, makes life much easier. So let's go to this PC, system properties, and then advanced system settings, and then environment variable. I'm going to say that MSVC vars 64-bit. I mean, I'm going to only use the 64-bit, so it's not going to be, and then backward slash, and then the name of this application, which is VC, Visual Compiler vars variable 64-bit. Okay, let's paste this here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, if I close this and open this up again, if I say cl.exe, it's not going to find it because the path is not correctly set. But if I say MSVC, or basically I'm accessing an environment variable, MSVC underscore vars, yeah, we have to use it in the double code. And now it automatically runs the 64-bit and the path is set. So if I say echo %path, and now all the Microsoft Visual Compiler directories that I need to compile an application from terminal are added to the path, and they are set up for the 64-bit compiler. So I recommend you define these environment variables so that it's very easy. Now my path is set up. So let's go back to our desktop /test. We have this hello world class. So let's go now run our native image. So we're going to say that Graal. Let's actually let's run this with a double code. Later I will check whether we can somehow get rid of this double code because it's a little bit annoying. So GraalVM environment variable in the double code because program files has a space, so we want to get rid of that. And then backward slash native dash image.cmd, and then -cp here, right? The class path is here, and then the name of the class hello world. And then the output, we want to put it here. Let's call it my Java app. So it's going to be able to find the cl.exe, which is the Microsoft Visual Studio compiler. So GraalVM native image, creating this my app Java in the current working directory. Everything seems to be going well. There is no error. So it was able to find the default toolchain of the Windows, which is the Microsoft Visual Compiler. And again, the trick is to go to the auxiliary directory in the bin and then run vc var64.bat. And the easiest thing is to define a global environment variable that points to this file and then just quickly run it in your command prompt. All right, so let's wait this to finish. Usually the compilation of a class is relatively fast. I'm running in a virtual machine, so it takes a little bit more time, but it's going to eventually finish up, and then we can quickly execute the output executable file, which is my Java app, and make sure that it prints the right thing to the console, right? So this is a quick test that our native image is correctly installed. The default toolchain of the platform is set, and then we can also compile a Java application to a native executable binary. So this is just a quick demo. In the future lectures, I will go into all the details and will show you how to basically I will show you what the command line parameters that you can use with the native image and more details in general. So it's still compiling. So it's using the C compiler cl.exe, which is Microsoft x64. This is the recent version of the Microsoft Visual Compiler. So no problem with finding the default toolchain of Windows. By default, it uses the serial GC for the garbage collector, and then it's compiling, building universe, parsing methods, inlining methods. So everything is going as expected. So we will at the end get our executable file. There's probably no problem. We're not going to encounter any. Usually you encounter a problem at the beginning if the native image cannot detect your default platform compiler, but once it detects that, everything else should go smoothly. So compiling methods. And now everything is done. Our executable file is there, and as you can see, the extension is .exe. We know that in macOS Linux executable files don't have any extension, so you can either run it with myjavaapp.exe and it works, and you don't need to add the current working directory. You don't need to say dot and then myjavaapp. You can do that, but that's not necessary because in Windows the current working directory is automatically appended to the path. But you can also drop the extension, right? Because when you type some name with some space and something else, the terminal always assumes that the first string until it hits a space is the name of the executable application, and the other strings are the command line arguments that are passed, right? So if it doesn't matter if I say my Java app or my Java app.exe. So we were able to compile our Java application to a native executable. The size is large, 12 megabytes, mostly comes from the JVM and the JDK and the garbage collector stuff. And our native image is fully set up on Windows. Again, setting up the native image in Windows is a little bit more complicated than macOS and Linux. But I hope you now have a good understanding how to set it up. And from the next lecture, we're going to see how to actually use the native image. So please stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.